Let me do one little thing here.
Anne, what's the weather like in Spain? Are you in Portugal?
She stepped out, I guess. And Ann Doyle, weather report. We need a Spanish weather report.
No, I'm sorry, Orla. I didn't realize I was on mute. I'm in a place called Estepona. It's down in Andalusia in Spain. It's lovely. Now, it's not too hot, so it's quite enjoyable.
Good. So, brief word for the folks who may listen to the video at a later date. We are continuing with a reading of Wandering Rocks. And in the Wordsworth edition, we are starting on page 221. And the key words are, "The youngster will be all right," Martin Cunningham said as they passed out of the castle gate yard. There we go. On we go. The policeman touched his forehead. "God bless you," Martin Cunningham said cheerily. He signed to the waiting Jarvey, who chucked at the reins and set on towards Lord Edward Street. Runs by Gold, Miss Kennedy's head by Miss Douche's head appeared above the crossline of the Ormond Hotel. Bill Kennedy, take over.
"Yes," Martin Cunningham said, fingering his beard. "I wrote to Father Conmee and laid the whole case before him." "You could try your friend," Mr. Powers suggested backward. "Boyd?" Martin Cunningham said shortly. "Touch me not." John Wise Nolan, lagging behind, reading the list, came after them quickly down Cork Hill. On the steps of the City Hall, Councillor Nannetti, descending, hailed Alderman Cowley and Councillor Abraham Lyon ascending. The castle car wheeled empty into Upper Exchange Street. "Look here, Martin," John Wise Nolan said, overtaking them at the mail office. "I see Bloom put his name down for 5 shillings. "Quite right," Martin Cunningham said, taking the list. "And put down the 5 shillings, too." "Without a second word either," Mr. Powers said. "Strange but true," Martin Cunningham added. John Wise Nolan opened wide eyes. "I'll say there is much kindness in the Jew," he quoted elegantly. They went down Parliament Street. "There's Jimmy Henry," Mr. Powers said, "just heading for Kavanagh's." "Right-o," Martin Cunningham said. "Here goes." Outside the Maison Claire, Blazes Boylan waylaid Jack Mooney's brother-in-law, Humpty Tight, making for the Liberties. John Wise Nolan fell back with Mr. Power, while Martin Cunningham took the elbow of a dapper little man in a shower of hail suit, who walked uncertainly with hasty steps past Mickey Anderson's watches. "The assistant town clerk's corns are giving him some trouble," John Wise Nolan told Mr. Power. They followed round the corner towards James Kavanaugh's wine rooms. The empty castle car fronted them at rest in Essex Gate. Martin Cunningham, speaking always, showed often the list at which Jimmy Henry did not glance. "And Long John Fanning is here too," John Wise Nolan said, as large as life. The tall form of Long John Fanning filled the doorway where he stood. "Good day, Mr. Sub-Sheriff," Martin Cunningham said, as all halted and greeted. Long John Fanning made no way for them. He removed his large Henry clay decisively, and his large, fierce eyes scowled intelligently over all their faces. "Are the conscript fathers pursuing their peaceful deliberations?" he said, with rich, acrid utterance to the assistant town clerk. "Hell open to Christians they were having," Jimmy Henry said pettishly, "about their damned Irish language." Where was the marshal, he wanted to know, to keep order in the council chamber? And old Barlow, the mace bearer, laid up with asthma. No mace on the table, nothing in order, no quorum even. And Hutchinson, the Lord Mayor, in Llandudno, and little Lorcan Sherlock doing docum tenens for him. Damned Irish language of our forefathers. Long John Fanning blew a plume of smoke from his lips. Martin Cunningham spoke by turns, twirling the peak of his beard to the assistant town clerk and the sub-sheriff, while John Wise Nolan held his peace. Next, please.
What dignum was that? Long John Fanning asked. Jimmy Henry made a grimace and lifted his left foot. Oh, my corns, he said plaintively. Come upstairs, for goodness sake, till I sit down somewhere. Oh, mind. Testily, he made room for himself beside Long John Fanning's flank and passed in and up the stairs. Come on up, Martin Cunningham said to the sub-sheriff. I don't think you knew him, or perhaps you did, though. With John Wise Nolan, Mr. Power followed them in. Decent little soul he was, Mr. Power said to the stalwart back of Long John Fanning, ascending towards Long John Fanning in the mirror. Rather low-sized. Dignum of Menton's office, that was, Martin Cunningham said. Long John Fanning could not remember him. Clatter of horses sounded from the air. What's that? Martin Cunningham said. All turned where they stood. John Wise Nolan came down again. From the cool shadow of the doorway, he saw the horses pass Parliament Street, harness and glossy pasterns in sunlight shimmering. Gaily they went past before his cool, unfriendly eyes, not quickly. In saddles of the leaders, leaping leaders, rode outriders. What was that? Martin Cunningham asked as they went up on the staircase. The Lord Lieutenant General and General Governor of Ireland, John Wise Nolan answered from the stairfoot. As they trod across the thick carpet, Buck Mulligan whispered behind his Panama to Haynes, Parnell's brother, there in the corner. They chose a small table near the window, opposite a long-faced man whose beard and gaze hung intently down on a chessboard. Is that he? Haynes asked, twisting around in his seat. Yes, Mulligan said. That's John Howard, his brother, our city marshal. John Howard Parnell translated a white bishop quietly, and his gray claw went up again to his forehead, whereat it rested. An instant later, under its screen, his eyes looked quickly, ghost bright, at his foe, and fell once more upon a working quarter. I'll take a melange, Haynes said to the waitress. 2 melanges, Buck Mulligan said, and bring us some scones and butter and some cakes as well. When she'd gone, he said, laughing, we call it DBC because they have damn bad cakes. Oh, but you missed Daedalus on Hamlet. Haynes opened his new-bought book. I'm sorry, he said. Shakespeare is the happy hunting ground of all minds that have lost their balance. The one-legged sailor growled at the area of 14 Nelson Street. England expects... Next, please.
Buck Mulligan's primrose waistcoat shook gaily to his laughter. You should see him, he said, when his body loses its balance. Wandering Angus, I call him. I'm sure he has an idée fixe, Haynes said, pinching his chin thoughtfully with thumb and forefinger. Now I am speculating what it would be likely to be. Such persons always have. Buck Mulligan bent across the table gravely. They drove his wits astray, he said, by visions of hell. He will never capture the Attic note, the note of Swinburne, of all poets, the white death and the ruddy birth. That is his tragedy. He can never be a poet, the joy of creation. Eternal punishment, Haynes said, nodding curtly. I see. I tackled him this morning on belief. There was something on his mind, I saw. It's rather interesting because Professor Pokorny of Vienna makes an interesting point out of that. Buck Mulligan's watchful eyes saw the waitress come. He helped her to unload her tray. You can find no trace of hell in ancient Irish myth, Haynes said, amid the cheerful cups. The moral idea seems lacking. The sense of destiny, of retribution. Rather strange he should have just that fixed idea. Does he write anything for your movement? He sank 2 lumps of sugar deftly longwise through the whipped cream. Buck Mulligan slit a steaming scone in 2 and plastered butter over its smoking. He bit off a soft piece hungrily. 10 years, he said, chewing and laughing. He's going to write something in 10 years. Seems a long way off, Haynes said, thoughtfully lifting his spoon. Still, I shouldn't wonder if he did, after all. He tasted a spoonful from the creamy cone of his cup. This is real Irish cream, I take it, he said with forbearance. I don't want to be imposed upon. Elijah, skiff, light crumpled throwaways sailed eastward by flanks of ships and trawlers, amid an archipelago of corks, beyond New Wapping Street past Benson's Ferry, and by the 3-masted schooner Rose Vian from Bridgewater with bricks. Almidano Artifoni walked past Hollis Street, past Sewell's Yard. Behind him, Cashel, Boyle, O'Connor, Fitzmaurice, Tisdale, Farrell, with stick umbrella, a dust coat dangling. Shunned the lamp before Mr. Lawsmith's house and crossing, walked along Merrion Square. Distantly, behind him, a blind stripling tapped his way by the wall of College Park. Cashel, Boyle, O'Connor, Fitzmaurice, Tisdale, Farrell walked as far as Mr. Lewis Werner's cheerful windows, then turned and strode back along Merrion Square, his stick umbrella dust coat dangling. At the corner of Wilds, he halted, frowned at Elijah's name announced on the Metropolitan Hall, frowned at the distant pleasance of Duke's Lawn. His eyeglass flashed, frowning in the sun. With rat's teeth bared, he muttered, "Coactus volui." He strode on for Clare Street, grinding his fierce word. As he strode past Mr. Bloom's dental windows, the sway of his dust coat brushed rudely from its angle a slender tapping cane and swept onwards, having buffeted a toothless body. The blind stripling turned his sickly face after the striding form. "God's curse on you," he said sourly, "whoever you are. You're blinder nor I am, you bitch's bastard." Next, please.
Opposite Ruggie O'Donoghue's, Master Patrick Aloysius Dignam, pouring the £1.5 of mangans, late Ferrenbacks, pork steaks he'd been sent for, went along warm Wicklow Street dawdling. It was too blooming dull sitting in the parlour with Mrs. Stower and Mrs. Quigley and Mrs. McDowell, and the blind down, and they all had their sniffles and sipping sups of the superior tawny sherry Uncle Barney brought from Tunney's, and they eating crumbs of the cottage fruitcake, joying the whole blooming time and sighing. After Wicklow Lane, the window of Madame Doyle, court-dress milliner, stopped him. He stood looking at the 2 puckers stripped their pelts and putting on their props. From the side mirrors, 2 mourning Masters Dignam gaped silently. Myler Keogh, Dublin's pet lamb, will meet Sergeant Major Bennett, the Portobello bruiser, for a purse of 50 sovereigns. God, that'd be a good pucking match to see. Myler Keogh, that's the chap sparring out to him with the green sash. 2 bar entrance, soldiers, half price. I could easily do a bunk on Ma. Master Dignam on his left as he turned. That's me in mourning. When is it? May the 22nd. Shit, the blooming thing is all over. He turned to the right, and on his right, Master Dignam turned, his cap awry, his collar sticking up. Buttoning it down, his chin lifted, he saw the image of Mary Candle, charming soubrette, beside the 2 puckers. One of them mots that do be in for the packets of fags store smokes that his old fellow well to tell out of him for the one time he found out. Master Dignam got his collar down and dawdled on. The best pucker going for strength was Fitzsimon's. 1 puck in the wind from that fellow would knock you into the middle of next week, man. But the best pucker for science was Jem Corbett before Fitzsimons knocked the stuffings out of him, dodging a knoll. In Grafton Street, Master Dignam saw a red flower in a top's mouth and a swell pair of kicks on him, and he listened to what the drunk was telling him and grinning all the time. No Sandyman tram. Master Dignam walked along Nassau Street, shifted the pork steaks to his other hand. His collar sprang up again and he tugged it down. The blooming stud was too small for the buttonhole of the shirt, blooming end to it. He met schoolboys with statues. I'm not going tomorrow either. Stay away till Monday. He met other schoolboys. Do they notice I'm in mourning? Uncle Barney said he'd get it in the paper tonight. Then they'll see it in the paper and read my name printed and Pa's name. His face got all grey instead of being red like it was, and there was a fly walking over it up to his eye. The scrunch that was when they were screwing the screws into the coffin, and the bumps when they were bringing it downstairs. Pa was inside it, and Ma crying in the parlour, and Uncle Barney telling the men how to get it round the bend. A big coffin it was, and high and heavy looking. How was that? The last night Pa was boozed, he was standing on the landing there, bawling out for his boots to go out to Tunney's for to booze more, and he looked butty and short in his shirt. Never see him again. Death, that is. Pa is dead. My father is dead. He told me to be a good son to Ma. I couldn't hear the other things he said, but I saw his tongue and his teeth trying to say it better. Poor Pa. That was Mr. Dignam, my father. I hope he's in purgatory now, because he went to confession to Father Conroy on Saturday night. Next.
William Humble, Earl of Dudley, and Lady Dudley, accompanied by Lieutenant Colonel Helsentine, drove out after luncheon from the Viceregal Lodge. In the following carriage were the Honorable Miss Paget, Miss De Courcy, and the Honorable Gerald Ward, ADC, in attendance. The cavalcade passed out by the lower gate of the Phoenix Park, saluted by obsequious policemen, and proceeded past Kingsbridge along the northern quays. The Viceroy was most cordially greeted on his way through the metropolis. At Bloody Bridge, Mr. Thomas Kernan, beyond the river, greeted him vainly from afar. Between Queen's and Whitworth bridges, Lord Dudley's viceregal carriages passed and were unsaluted by Mr. Dudley White, BLMA, who stood on Arran Quay outside Mrs. M.E. White's, the pawnbroker's, at the corner of Arran Street West, stroking his nose with his forefinger, undecided whether he should arrive at Phillipsborough more quickly by a triple charge of tram or by hailing a car or on foot to Smithfield, Constitution Hill, and Broadstone Terminus. In the porch of Four Courts, Richie Goulding, with the cost bag of Goulding, Collis, and Ward, saw him with surprise. Past Richmond Bridge at the doorstep on the office of Reuben J. Dodd, solicitor agent for the Patriotic Insurance Company, an elderly female about to enter, changed her plan, and retracing her steps by the king's windows, smiled credulously on the representative of His Majesty. From its sluice in Wood Quay, wall under John Devan's office, Pottle River hung out in fealty, a tongue of liquid sewage. Above the cross blind of the Ormond Hotel, gold by bronze, Miss Kennedy's head by Miss Douce's head, watched and admired. On Ormond's Quay, Mr. Simon Dedalus, steering his way from the greenhouse for the sub-sheriff's office, stood still in mid-street and brought his hat low. His Excellency graciously returned Mr. Dedalus's greeting. From Cahill's Corner, the Reverend Hugh C. Love, M.A., made obeisance unperceived, mindful of Lord's deputies whose hands had held of your rich advalsons. On Grattan Street, Lenhan and McCoy, taking leave of each other, watched the carriages go by. Passing by Roger Green's office and Dollard's big red printing house, Gertie McDowell, carrying the gates by court lino letters for her father, who was laid up, knew by the style it was a hotel, it was a lord and lady lieutenant, but she couldn't see what his excellency had on because the tram and Spring's big yellow furniture van had stopped in front of her on account of its being the Lord Lieutenant. Next, please.
Beyond Lundy Foots, from the account of it, from the shaded door of Kavanagh's wine rooms, John Wise Nolan smiled with unseen coldness towards the Lord Lieutenant General and General Governor of Ireland, the Right Honourable William Humble, Earl of Dudley, GCVO, past Mickey Anderson's all times ticking watches and Henry and James wax smart-suited, fresh-cheeked models. The gentleman Henry, Dernier Cree, Jane. Over against Dame Gate, Tom Rochford and Nosy Flynn watched the approach of the cavalcade. Tom Rochford, seeing the eyes of Lady Dudley on him, took his thumbs quickly out of the pockets of his claret waistcoat and doffed his cap to her. A charming soubrette, great Marie Kendall, with dauby cheeks and lifted skirt, smiled daubily from her poster upon William Humble, Earl of Dudley, and upon Lieutenant Colonel H.G. Heseltine, and also upon the Honourable General Ward, ADC. From the window of the DBC, Buck Mulligan gaily and Haines gravely gazed down on the vice-regal equipage over the shoulders of eager guests, whose massive forms darkened the chessboard whereon John Howard Parnell looked intently. In Found Street, Dilly Daedalus, straining her sight upward from Chardinal's first French primer, saw sunshades spanned and wheel spokes spinning in the glare. John Henry Menton, filling the doorway of commercial buildings, stared from wine-big oyster eyes, holding a fat gold hunter watch not looked at in his fat left hand, not feeling it. Where the foreleg of King Billy's horse pawed the air, Mrs. Breen plucked her hastening husband back from under the hoofs of the outriders. She shouted in his ear the tidings. Understanding, he shifted his tomes to his left breast and saluted the second carriage. The Honourable Gerald Ward, ADC, agreeably surprised, made haste to reply. At Ponsonby's corner, a jaded white flagon, H, halted, and 4 tall-hatted white flagons halted behind him, ELY''S, while outriders pranced past and carriages. Opposite Pigot's music warerooms, Mr. Dennis J. McGinney, professor of dancing and C, gaily apparelled, gravely walked, outpassed by a viceroy and unobserved. By the provost's wall came jauntily Blazes Boylan, stepping in tan shoes and socks with sky blue clocks to the refrain of My Girl's a Yorkshire Girl. Next, please.
Blazes Boylan presented to the leaders sky blue frontlets and high action a sky blue tie, a wide-brimmed straw hat at a rakish angle, and a suit of indigo serge. His hands in his jacket pockets forgot to salute, but he offered to the 3 ladies the bold admiration of his eyes and the red flowers between his lips. And as they drove along Nassau Street, His Excellency drew the attention of his bowing consort to the programme of music which was being discoursed in College Park. Unseen, brazen Highland laddies blared and drum-thumped after the courtier. But though she's a factory lass and wears no fancy clothes, barambum, yet I'm a sort of a Yorkshire relish for my little Yorkshire rose, barambum. Hither of the wall, the quarter-mile flat handy scrappers, MC Green, H. Thrift, T.M. Patty, C. Scap, J.B. Jeps, G.N. Murphy, F. Stevenson, C. Adderley, and W.C. Hubbard started in pursuit. Striving past Finn's Hotel, Castleboyle O'Connor, Fitzmaurice, Tinsel Farrell stared through a fierce eyeglass across the carriages at the head of Mr. Solomons in the window of the Austro-Hungarian vice-consulate. Deep in Leinster Street by Trinity Poster, a loyal kingsman, Hornblown, touched his tally-ho cap. At the glossy horses pranced by Merrion Square, Master Patrick Aloysius Dignam, waiting, so salutes being given to the gent with the topper, and raised also his new black cap, with fingers greased by pork steak paper. Next, please.
His collar too sprang up. The viceroy, on his way to inaugurate the Mirrors Bazaar in aid of funds for Mercer's Hospital, drove with his following towards Lower Mount Street. He passed O'Brien's Stripling opposite Broadbent's. In Lower Mount Street, a pedestrian in a brown mackintosh eating dry bread passed swiftly and unscathed across the viceroy's path. At the Royal Canal Bridge, from his hoarding, Mr. Eugene Stratton, his blub lips a grin, bade all comers welcome to Pembroke Township. At Haddington Road corner, two sanded women halted themselves, an umbrella and a bag in which 11 cockles rolled to view with wonder the Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayoress without his golden chain. Northumberland and Lansdowne roads, His Excellency acknowledged punctually salutes from rare male walkers. The salute of two small schoolboys at the garden gate of the house, said to have been admired by the late Queen when visiting the Irish capital with her husband, the Prince Consort, in 1849. And the salute of Almidano Artifoni's sturdy trousers swallowed by a closing door. Next, please.
Bronzed by gold, heard the hoof iron steelily ringing. Impertinent, chips, picking chips off Rocky thumbnail, chips, horrid, and gold flushed more. A husky fife note blew, bloom is on the gold pinnacled hair. A jumping rose on satiny breast of satin, rose of Castile, trilling, Eh, Dolores, peep, who's in the peep of gold? Tink cried to bronze and pity, and a call, pure, long, and throbbing, long and dying call. Decoy, soft word, but look, the bright stars fade. Oh, Rose. Notes, chirruping answer. Castile, the morn is breaking. Jingle, jingle, jaunted, jingling. Coin rang, clock clacked. A vowel, sonne. I could, rebound of garter, not leave thee. Smack, la cloche. A thigh smack, a vowel, warm. Sweetheart, goodbye. Jingle, blue, boomed crashing chords when love absorbs. War, the tympanum. A sail, a veil, a wave upon the waves. Lost, throstle fluted, all is lost now. Horn, horn, when first he saw, alas, full tup, full throb, warbling, alluring, Martha, come, clap, clap, clip, clap, clappy, clap. Good God, he never heard in all. Deaf bald Pat brought pad knife, took up a moonlit night call, far, far. I feel so sad. P.S. So lonely blooming. Listen, the spiked and winding cold sea horn. Have you the? Each and for other plash and silent roar. Pearls, when she lists rhapsodies. Hiss, you don't? Did not, no, believe. Lid, with a cock, with a cra, black, deep sounding. Do, Ben, do. Wait while you wait, wait while you but wait. Low and dark middle earth, embedded lore. Nomine Domine, all gone, all fallen. Tiny, her tremulous fern foils of maidenhair. Amen, he gnashed in fury. Fro, to, fro, a baton, cool, protruding. Bronze Lydia, by Mina, gold, by bronze, by gold, an ocean green of shadow, bloom, old bloom, one wrapped, one tapped, with a cra, with a cock. Pray for him, pray, good people, his gouty fingers knackering. Big Ben, Big Ben. Last rose Castile of summer left bloom. I feel so sad alone. Little wind piped, "Pwee, true men, lid, cur, cow, dee, and all. I, like you men, will lift your chink with chunk. Ooh, where bronze from anear, where gold from afar, where hoofs, Randall, then not till then, my epitaph be writ done. Begin.
Really? Bronze by gold, Miss Douce's head by Miss Kennedy's head, over the cross blind of the Ormond bar, heard the vice-regal hoofs go by, ringing steel. Is that her? Asked Miss Kennedy. Miss Douce said yes, sitting with his ex, pearl gray and eau de Nil. Exquisite contrast, Miss Kennedy said. Well, when all agog, Miss Douce said eagerly, look at the fellow with the tall silk. Oh, where? Gold asked more eagerly. In the second carriage, Miss Douce's wet lips said, laughing in the sun. He's looking. Mind till I see. She darted, bronze, to the backmost corner, flattening her face against the pane in a halo of hurried breath. Her wet lips tittered. He's killed looking back. She laughed. Oh, wept. Aren't men frightful idiots? With sadness. Miss Kennedy sauntered sadly from bright light, twining a loose hair behind an ear. Sauntering sadly, gold no more, she twisted, twined a hair. Sadly she twined in sauntering gold hair behind a curving ear. It's them has the fine time, sadly then she said. A man. Blue who went by Moulin's pipes, bearing in his breast the sweets of sin, by wine's antiques, in memory bearing sweet, sinful words by Carol's dusky, battered plate for Rual. The boots to them in the bar, them barmaids came. For them, unheeding him, he banged on the counter his tray of chattering china. And there's your teas, he said. Miss Kennedy, with manners, transposed the tea tray down to an upturned lithia crate, safe from eyes low. What is it? Loud Boots unmanly asked. Find out, Miss Douce retorted, leaving her spying point. Your beau, is it? A haughty bronze replied. I'll complain to Mrs. de Massey on you if I hear any more of your impertinent insolence. Impertinent Boots now sniffed rudely as he retreated, as she threatened as he had come. Bloom. On her flower, frowning, Miss Douce said, most aggravated that young brat is. If he doesn't conduct himself, I'll ring his ear for him a yard long. Ladylike in exquisite contrast. Take no notice, Miss Kennedy rejoined. She poured a teacup tea, then back in the teapot tea. They cowered under their reef of counter, waiting on footstools, crates upturned, waiting for their teas to draw. They pawed their blouses, both of black satin, 2 and 9 a yard, waiting for their teas to draw, and 2 and 7. Yes, bronze from anear, my gold from afar, heard steel from anear, hoofs ring from afar, and heard steel hoofs, ring hoof, ring steel. Am I awfully sunburnt? Miss Bronze unbloused her neck. No, said Miss Kennedy. It gets brown after. Did you try the borax with the cherry laurel water? Miss Douce half stood to see her skin askance in the bar mirror, gilded lettered, where hock and claret glasses shimmered and in the midst a shell. And leave it to my hand, she said. Try it with the glycerine, Miss Kennedy advised. Bidding her neck and hands adieu, Miss Douce. Those things only bring out a rash, replied, Miss Seated. I asked that old fogey in Boyd's for something for my skin. Miss Kennedy, pouring out a full drawn tea, grimaced and prayed. Oh, don't remind me of it for mercy's sake. Oh, wait till I tell you, Miss Douce entreated. Sweet tea, Miss Kennedy, having poured with milk, plugged both 2 ears with little fingers. No, don't, she cried. I won't listen, she cried. But Bloom, Miss Douce grunted in snuffy fogey's tone. For you what, says he. Miss Kennedy unplugged her ears to hear, to speak, but prayed again. Don't let me think of him or I'll expire. The hideous old wretch. That night in the ancient concert rooms. Next.
He sipped distastefully her brew, hot tea, a sip, sipped sweet tea. Here he was, Miss Douce said, cocking her bronze head 3/4, ruffling her nose wings. Huffa, huffa. Shrill shriek of laughter rang from Miss Kennedy's throat. Miss Douce huffed and snorted down her nostrils. That quivered impertinent, like a shout in quest. Oh, shrieking Miss Kennedy cried, will you ever forget his goggle eye? Miss Douce chimed in deep bronze laughter, shouting, and your other eye. Below whose dark eye read Aaron Figator's name. Why do I always think fig gather? Gathering figs, I think. And Prosper Lore's Huguenot name. By Bassie's blessed virgins, Bloom's dark eyes went by. Blue-robed, white under, come to me. God they believe she is, or goddess, those today. I could not see. That fellow spoke, a student, after with Daedalus' son. He might be Mulligan. All comely virgins. That brings those rakes of fellas in, or white. By went his eyes, the sweets of sin, sweet are the sweets of sin. In a giggling peal, young gold bronze voices blended. Douce with Kennedy, your other eye. They threw young heads back, bronze giggle gold, to let free fly their laughter, screaming. Your other signals to each other, high piercing notes. Ah, panting, sighing, sighing. Ah, fordone their mirth died down. Miss Kennedy lipped her cup again, raised, drank a sip, and giggled. Miss Douce bending again over the tea tray, ruffled again her nose and drove flattened eyes. Again Kenny giggles, stooping her fair pinnacles of hair, stooping. Her tortoise nape comb showed, spluttered out of her mouth her tea, choking in tea and laughter, coughing with choking, crying. Oh, greasy eyes, imagine being married to a man like that, she cried, with his bit of beard. Douce gave full vent to a splendid yell, a full yell of full woman, delight, joy, indignation. Married to the greasy nose, she yelled. Shrill with deep laughter after bronze and gold, they urged each other to peal after peal, ringing in changes. Bronze, gold, gold, bronze, shrill deep to laughter after laughter, and then laughed more. Greasy I knows, exhausted, breathless, their shaken heads they laid, braided and pinnacled by glossy combed against the counter ledge. All flushed, oh, panting, sweating, oh, all breathless, married to Bloom, to Grease a Bloom. Oh, saints above, Miss Douce said, sighing over her jumping rose. I wished I hadn't laughed so much. I feel all. Folks, Kennedy protested, you horrid thing, and flushed yet more, you horrid, more goldenly. By Cantwell's offices roved Grease Bloom, by Cheppy's virgins, bright of their oils. Nanetti's father hawked these things about, wheedling at doors as high religion pays. Must see him about Keys Par. Eat first. I want, not yet, at 4, she said. Time ever passing, clock hands turning, on. Where eat? The Clarence, Dolphin, on. For Raoul, eat. If I net 5 guineas with those ads, the violet silk petticoats, not yet the sweets of sin, flushed less, still less, goldenly pale. Inside their bar strolled Mr. Dedalus, chips, picking chips off one of his rocky thumbnails. Chips, he strolled. Well, welcome back, Miss Deuce. He held her hand. Enjoyed her holidays? Tip-top. He hoped she had nice weather in Rostrevor. Gorgeous, she said. Look at the holy show I am, lying out on the strand all day. Bronze whiteness. That was exceedingly naughty of you, Mr. Dedalus told her, impressed her hand indulgently. Poor, simple nails. Next, please.
Miss Deuce of Satin deuced her arm away. Oh, go away, she said. You're very simple, I don't think. He was. Well, now I am, he mused. I looked so simple in the cradle, they christened me Simple Simon. Oh, you must have been a doty, Miss Deuce made answer. And what did the doctor order today? Well, now, he mused, whatever you say yourself, I think I'll trouble you for some fresh water and a half glass of whiskey. Jingle. With the greatest alacrity, Miss Deuce agreed. With grace of alacrity towards the mirror-gilt Cantrell and Cochrane's she turned herself. With grace she tapped a measure of gold whiskey from her crystal keg. Forth from the skirt of his coat, Mr. Dedalus brought pouch and pipe. Alacrity she served. He blew through the flue 2 husky 5-notes. By Jove, he mused, I often wanted to see the Mourne Mountains. Must be a great tonic in the air down there. But along threatening comes at last, they say. Yes, yes, yes. He fingered shreds of hair, her maiden hair, her mermaids into the bowl. Chips, shreds, musing, mute. None not said nothing. Yes. Gaily Miss Deuce polished a timbre, trilling, Oh, I, Dolores, queen of the eastern seas. Was Mr. Lidwell in today? In came Lennon. Round him peered Lennon. Mr. Bloom reached Essex Bridge. Yes, Mr. Bloom crossed Bridge of Essex. To Martha I must write, by paper. Dailies, girl there Sybil. Bloom, old Bloom. Blue Bloom is on the Rye. He was in at lunchtime, Miss Deuce said. Lennon came forward. Was Mr. Boylan looking for me? He asked. She answered. Miss Kennedy, was Mr. Boylan in while I was upstairs? She asked. Miss Voice of Kennedy answered. A second teacup poised her gaze upon a page. No, he was not. Miss Gaze of Kennedy, heard not seen, read on. Lennon ran the sandwich bell, wound his round body round. Peep, who's in the corner? No glance of Kennedy rewarding him, yet he made overtures to mind her stops, to read only the black ones, round O and crooked S. Jingle, jaunty jingle. Girl gold she read and did not glance, take no notice. She took no notice while he read by rote a sulphate fable for her, plappering flatly. Ah, fox met, stork. Said the fox to the stork, will you put your bill down in my throat and pull up a bone? He droned in vain. Miss Deuce turned to her tea aside. He sighed aside. Ah, me, oh my. He greeted Mr. Dedalus and got a nod. Greetings from the famous son of a famous father. Who may he be? Mr. Dedalus asked. Lennon opened most genial arms. Who? Who may he be? He asked. Can you ask? Stephen, the youthful bard. Dry. Mr. Dedalus, famous father, laid by his dry-filled pipe. I see, he said. I didn't recognize him for the moment. I hear he is keeping very select company. Have you seen him lately? He had. Next.
I quaffed the nectar bow with him this very day, said Lenehan. In Mooney's Envie and in Mooney's sur Mer, he had received the rhino for the labor of his muse. He smiled at Bronze's tea-bathed lips, at listening lips and eyes. The elite of Erin hung upon his lips, the ponderous pundit Hugh McHugh, Dublin's most brilliant scribe and editor, and that minstrel boy of the wild wet West, who is known by the euphonious appellation of the O'Madden Burke. After an interval, Mr. Dedalus raised his grog, and that must have been highly diverting, said he. I see. He drank. With faraway morning mountain eye, set down his glass. He looked towards the saloon door. I see you have moved the piano. The tuner was in today, Miss Douce replied, tuning it for the smoking concert. And I never heard such an exquisite player. Is that a fact? Didn't he, Miss Kennedy? The real classical, you know, and blind too, poor fellow. Not 20, I'm sure he was. Is that a fact? Mr. Dedalus said. He drank and strayed away. So sad to look at his face, Miss Douce condoled. God's curse on bitch's bastard. Tink, to her pity, cried a diner's bell. To the door of the bar and dining room came bothered Pat, came Pat, waiter of Ormond. Lager for dinner. Lager without alacrity, she served. With patience, Lenehan waited for Boylan with impatience for Jingle Jaunty Blazes boy. Upholding the lid, who gazed at the coffin at the oblique triple piano wires. He pressed the same who pressed indulgently her hand, soft pedaling, a triple of keys to see the thicknesses of felt advancing, to hear the muffled hammer fall in action. 2 sheets cream vellum paper, 1 reserved, 2 envelopes, when I was in Wisdom Healy's Wise Bloom in Daly's Henry Flower bought. Are you not happy in your home? Flower to console me and a pin cut slow. Means something language of flower. Was it a daisy? Innocence, that is. Respectable girl meet after mass. Thanks awfully muchly. Wise Bloom eyed on the door a poster, a swaying mermaid, smoking mid nice waves. Smoke mermaids, coolest whiff of all. Hair streaming, lovelorn. For some man, for Raoul. He eyed and saw afar on Essex Bridge a gay hat riding on a jaunting car. It is, again, 3rd time, coincidence. Jingling on supple rubbers, it jaunted from the bridge to Ormond Quay. Follow, risk it, go quick at 4, near now, out. 2pence, sir, the shop girl dared to say. I was forgetting, excuse, and 4, at 4 she, winsomely she unblew him whom smiled, blue smile he go, turnoon. Think you're the only pebble on the beach? Does that to all, for men. In drowsy silence, gold bent on her page. From the saloon a call came, long and dying. That was a tuning fork the tuner had, that he forgot, that he now struck. A call again, that he now poised, that is now throbbed. You hear? It throbbed, pure, softly and softlier, its buzzing prongs, longer in dying call. Pat paid for diner's pop cork bottles and over tumbler, tray, and pop cork bottle air. He whispered, bald and bothered with Miss Douce. The bright star fades. A voiceless song sang from within, singing, the morn is breaking. Next, please.
A duodene of bird notes chirruped, bright treble answer, under sensitive hands. Brightly the keys, all twinkling, linked, all harpsichording, called to a voice to sing the strain of dewy morn, of youth, of love's leave-taking, life's, love's morn. The dewdrops purled. Lenehan's lips over the counter lisped a low whistle of decoy. But look this way, he said. Rose of Castile. Jingle jaunted by the curb and stopped. She rose and closed her reading. Rose of Castile, fretted, forlorn, dreamily rose. Did she fall or was she pushed? He asked her. She answered, slighting. Ask no questions and you'll hear no lies. Like lady, ladylike. Blazes Boylan's smart tan shoes creaked on the bar floor where he strode. Yes, gold from anear by bronze from afar. Lenehan heard and knew and hailed him. See, the conquering hero comes. Between the car window, warily walking, went Bloom, unconquered hero. See me he might. The seat he sat on, warm, black, wary he cat walked towards Richie Goulding's legal bag, lifted aloft, saluting. And I from thee. I heard you around, said Blazes Boylan. He touched to fair Miss Kennedy a rim of his slanted straw. She smiled on him, but Sister Bronze outsmiled her, preening for him, her richer hair, a bosom and a rose. Boylan bespoke potions. Next, please.
What's your cry? Glass of bitter, please. And a slow gin for me. Wire in yet? Not yet, at 4, he all said 4. Crowley's red lugs, and Adam's apple in the door of the sheriff's office. Avoid. Goulding a chance. What is he doing in the Ormond? Car waiting. Wait. Hello, we're off to. Something to eat. I too was just in here. What? Ormond? Best value in Dublin. Is that so? Dining room. Sit tight there. See, not be seen. I think I'll join you. Come on, Richie, led on. Bloom followed bag. Dinner fit for a prince. Miss Joyce reached high to take a flagon, stretching her satin arm, her bust, that all but bust so high. Oh, jerked Lenehan, gasping at each stretch. Oh, but easily she seized her prey and let it low in triumph. Why don't you grow? Asked Blazes Boylan. She bronze, dealing from her jar thick syrupy liquor for his lips, looked at it flowed, flower in his coat. Who gave him? And served with her voice, fine goods in small parcels. That is to say, neatly she poured, slow, syrupy, slow. Here's fortune, Blazes said. He pitched a broad coin down. Coin rang. Hold on, said Linden, till I. Fortune, he wished, lifting his bubbled ale. Sceptre will win in a canter, he said. I plunged a bit, said Boylan, winking and drinking. Not on my own, you know. Fancy of a friend of mine. Lenehan still drank and grinned at his tilted ale, and at Miss Juice's lips that all but hummed, not shut. The ocean song, her lips had trilled, it Laura's. The eastern seas, clocked whirled. Miss Kennedy passed their way, flower, wonder who gave. Bearing away tea tray, clock clacked. Next, please.
Miss Deuce took Boylan's coin, struck boldly the cash register. It clanged. Clock clacked. Fair one of Egypt teased and sorted in the till and hummed and handed coins and change. Looked to the west, a clack for me. What time is it? Asked Blazes Boylan. 4 o'clock. Lenehan, small eyes a hunger on her humming, bust a humming, tugged Blazes Boylan's elbow sleeve. Let's hear the time. The bag of Golding Collis ward let bloom by rye bloom flowered tables. Aimless he chose with agitated aim. Bald Pat attending, a table near the door. Be near at 4. Has he forgotten? Perhaps a trick. No, not come. Wet appetite. I couldn't do. Wait. Pat waiter waited. Sparkling bronze azure-eyed blazers, sky blue bow and eyes. Go on, pressed Lenehan. There's no one. He never heard. To Flora's lips did bite. Did high. A high note, peeled and the trouble clear. Next.
Bronze Deuce, communing with her rose that sank and rose, sought Blazes Boylan's flower and eyes. Please, please, he pleaded over returning phrases of avowal. I could not leave thee. Afterwards, Miss Deuce promised coyly. No, now, urged Lenehan, sonnez la cloche. Oh, do, there's no one. She looked quick, Miss Ken out of earshot, sudden bent. Two kindling faces watched her bend. Quavering, the cord strayed from the air, found it again, lost cord, and lost and found it, faltering. Go on, do, sonnez. Bending, she nipped a peak of skirt above her knee, delayed, taunted them still, bending, suspending, with willful eyes. Sonnez! Smack! She let free, sudden in rebound, her nipped elastic garter. Smack! Warm against her smackable woman's warm hose thigh. La cloche! Cried gleeful Lenehan. Trained by owner, no sawdust there. She smiled, smirked, supercilious, wept, aren't men, but lightward gliding, mild, she smiled on Boylan. You're the essence of vulgarity, she in gliding said. Boylan eyed, tossed to fat lips his chalice, drank off his tiny chalice, sucking the last fat violet syrupy drops. His spellbound eyes went after her gliding head as it went down the bar by mirrors, gilded arch for ginger ale, hock and claret glasses shimmering, a spiky shell where it concerted, mirrored, bronze with sunnier bronze. Yes, bronze from a nearby. Sweetheart, goodbye. I'm off, said Boylan with impatience. He slid his chalice brisk away, grasped his change. Wait a shake, begged Lenehan, drinking quickly. I wanted to tell you, Tom Rochford. Come on to Blazes, said Blazes Boylan, going. Lenehan gulped to go. Cut the horn or what? He said. Wait, I'm coming. He followed the hasty creaking shoes, but stood by nimbly by the threshold, saluting forms, a bulky with a slender. How do you do, Mr. Dollard? How do, Ben Dollard's vague bass answered, turning an instant from Father Cowley's woe. He won't give you any trouble, Bob. Alf Bergen will speak to the long fellow. We'll put a barley straw in that Judas Iscariot's ear this time. Sighing, Mr. Dedalus came through the saloon, a finger soothing an eyelid. Ho, 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 we will, Ben Dartle, yodeled jollily. Come on, Simon, give us a ditty. We heard the piano. Bald Pat bothered waiter. Waited for drink orders. Power for Richie. And Bloom? Let me see, not make him walk twice. His corn's 4 now. How warm this black is. Coarse nerves a bit. Refracts, is it? Heat, let me see. Cider, yes, bottle of cider. What's that? Mr. Dedalus said. I was only vamping, man. Come on, Ben Dollard called. Begone, dull care. Come, Bob. He ambled Dollard, bulky slops before them. Hold that fellow with thee. Hold him now. Into the saloon. He plumped him, Dollard, on stool. His gouty paws plumped cords. Plumped, stopped abrupt. Bald Pat in the doorway met tealess gold returning. Bothered he waited. Power and cider. Bronze by the window watched bronze from afar. Jingle a tinkle jaunted. Bloom heard a jing, a little sound. He's off. Light sob of breath. Bloom sighed on the silent bew-hued flowers. Jingling, he's gone. Jingle, here. Next, please.
Love and war, then Mr. Dedalus said. God be with the old tunes, the old times. Miss Deuce's brave eyes, unregarded, turned from the cross blind, smitten by sunlight, gone. Pensive, who knows, smitten with smiting light. She lowered the drop blind with a sliding cord. She drew down pensive. Why did he go so quick when I About her bronze, over the bar, where bald stood by sister gold, in exquisite contrast, contrast in exquisite, non-exquisite, slow, cool, dim, sea green, sliding depth of shadow, eau de Dieu. Poor old Goodwin was the pianist that night. Father Cowley reminded them. There was a slight difference of opinion between himself and Macaulay Grand. There was. A symposium all his own, Mr. Daedalus said. The devil wouldn't stop him. He was a crotchety old fellow in the primary stage of drink. God, do you remember? Ben Bulky Dollard said, turning from the punished keyboard. And by japers, I had no wedding garment. They laughed, all three. He had all trio laughed. No wedding garment. Our friend Bloom turned in handy that night, Mr. Daedalus said. Where's my pipe, by the way? He wandered back to the bar, to the lost chord pipe. Bald Pat carried 2 diners' drinks, Richie and Poldy. And Father Cowley laughed again. I saved the situation, Ben, I think. You did, averred Ben Stolland. I remember those tight trousers, too. That was a brilliant idea, Bob. Father Cowley blushed to his brilliant purply lobes. He saved the situation. Tight trow, brilliant-eyed. I knew he was on the rocks, he said. The wife was playing the piano in the Coffee Palace on Saturdays for a very trifling consideration. And it gave me the wheeze. She was doing the other business, do you remember? We had to stretch all Hollow Street to find them, till the chap in Keogh's gave us the number, remember? Ben remembered, his broad visage wondering. My God, she had some luxurious opera cloaks and things there. Mr. Daedalus wandered back, pipe in hand. Merrion Square style, ball dresses, by God, and court dresses. He wouldn't take any money either. What? Any God's quantity of cocked hats and boleros and trucos, what? Aye, Mr. Daedalus nodded. Mrs. Marion Bloom has left off clothes of all descriptions. Jingle jaunted down the quays. Blazers sprawled on bounding tires. Liver and bacon, steak and kidney pie. Right, sir. Right, Pat. Mrs. Marion met him pike hoses. Smell of burn, of Paul de Kock. Nice name, he. What's her? Yes, her name was a Buxaby lassie. Marion Tweedy. Yes, is she alive and kicking? She was the daughter of the regiment. We began. I remember the old drum major. Mr. Daedalus struck, whizzed off, lit, puffed, savory puff after. Irish? I don't know, Faith. Is she, Simon? Puff after stiff, a puff, strong, savory, crackling. Buccinator muscle is what, Rusty? Oh, she is my Irish Molly. Oh, he puffed a pungent, plumy blast from the rock of Gibraltar all the way. They pined in depth of ocean's shadow, gold by the beerful, bronze by Barraskino, thoughtful all too. Mina Kennedy for Elizabeth Terrace, young conjure with Edalors, a queen, Dolores, silent. Next.
Third uncovered dishes. Leopold cut liver slices. As said before, he ate with relish the inner organs, nutty gizzards, fried cod's roes, while Richie Goulding, Collis, Ward ate steak and kidney. Steak, then kidney, bite by bite of pie. He ate, Bloom ate, they ate. Bloom with Goulding married in silence ate. Dinners fit for princes. By bachelor's walk, jog, jaunty, jingle, blazes, boiland. Bachelor, in sun, in heat, mare's glossy rump a trot, with flick of whip on bounding tires, sprawled, warm-seated, boiling impatience, ardent, bold. Horn, have you the? Horn, have you the? Ha, ha, horn. Over their voices, Dollard bassooned attack, booming over bombarding chords. When love absorbs my ardent soul, roll of Ben Soul Benjamin, rolled to the quivery, love-shivery roof panes. War, war, cried Father Cowley. You're the warrior. So I am, Ben Warrior laughed. I was thinking of your landlord, lover money. He stopped. He wagged huge beard, huge face over his blunder huge. Sure, you'd burst the tympanum of her ear, man, Mr. Dedalus said through smoke aroma with an organ like yours. He heard abundant laughter. Dollard shook upon the keyboard. You would. Not to mention another membrane, Father Cowley added. Half time, Ben. Amoroso man on troppo. Let me there. Miss Kennedy served two gentlemen with tankards of cool stout. He passed a remark. It was indeed, first gentleman said. Beautiful weather. They drank cool stout. Did she know where the Lord Lieutenant was going? And heard steel hoofs hoof ring. No, she couldn't say, but it would be in the paper. Oh, she needn't trouble, no trouble. She waved about her outspread independent, searching. The Lord Lieutenant, her pinnacles of hair slow moving. Lord Lieutenant. Too much trouble, first gentleman said. Oh, not in the least. The way he looked at, Lord Lieutenant. Gold, my bronze, hard iron steel. My ardent soul, I care not for our the morrow. In liver gravy bloom mashed potatoes. Love and warm someone is. Ben Dollard's famous. Now he ran round to us to borrow a dress suit for that concert. Trousers tight as a drum of them. Musical porkers. Molly did laugh when he went out. Threw herself back across the bed, screaming, kicking. With all his belongings at show, oh saints above and drenched. Oh, the women in the front row, oh, I never laughed so many. Well, of course, that's what gives him the bass barrel tone. For instance, eunuchs. Wonder who's playing. Nice touch. Must be Cowley, musical. Knows whatever note you play. Bad breath he has, poor chap. Stopped. Miss Douce, engaging. Lydia Douce bowed to Swave's solicitor. George Lidwell, gentleman entering. Good afternoon. She gave her moist, a lady's hand to his firm clasp. Afternoon. Yes, she was back to the old ding-dong again. Your friends are inside, Mr. Lidwell. George Lidwell, suave, solicited, held a Lydia hand. Yes, please.
Bloom ain't live, as said before. Clean here, at least. That chap in the Burton coming with gristle. No one here. Goulding and I. Clean tables, flowers, mitres of napkins. Pat to and fro. Bald Pat. Nothing to do. Best value in Dub. Piano again. Cowley it is. Way he sits into it like one together. Mutual understanding. Tiresome shapers scraping fiddles, eye on the bow end, sawing the cello, remind you of toothache. Her high, long snore. Night we are in the box, trombone under, blowing like a grampus between the acts. Other brass chap unscrewing, emptying spittle. Conductor's legs too. Bags, trousers, jiggity, do right to hide them. Jiggity jingle, jaunty, jaunty. Only the harp, lovely gold glaring light. Girl touched it, poop of a lovely. Gravy's rather a good fit for a golden ship. Erin, the harp that once or twice. Cool hands, Ben Hote, the rhododendrons. We are their harps, I, he, old, young. Ah, couldn't man, Mr. Dedalus said, shy, listless, strongly. Go on, blast you, Mr. Ben Dollard growled. Get it out in bits. Ma Paris, Simon, Father Cowley said. Downstage, he strode some paces, grave, tall in affliction, his long arms outheld, hoarsely at the apple of his throat, hoarsed softly. Softly he sang to a dusty seaskip there, a last farewell. A headland, a ship, a sail upon the billows. Farewell. A lovely girl, her veil a wave upon the wind, upon the headland, wind about her. Next.
Cowley sang, Ma pari tutumor il mio sguardo il le conte. She waved, unhearing Cowley, her veil to one departing dear one, to wind, love, speeding sail, return. Go on, Simon. Ah, sure, my dancing days are done, Ben. Well, Mr. Dedalus laid his pipe to rest beside the tuning fork, and sitting touched the obedient keys. No, Simon, Father Cowley turned, play it in the original, one flat. The keys, obedient, rose higher, told, faltered, confessed, confused. Upstage strode Father Cowley. Here, Simon, I'll accompany you, he said. Get up. By Graham Lemon's Pineapple Rock, by Elvery's Elephant Jingly jogged. Steak, kidney, liver, mashed, a meat fit for princes, sat Princess Bloom and Goulding. Princes at meat they raised and drank, power and cider. Most beautiful tenor air ever written, Richie said, somnambula. He heard Joe Mass sing it that one night. Ah, what McGuckin. Yes, in his way, choir boy style, Mass was the boy, Mass boy. A lyric tender, if you like, a lyrical tender, if you like. Never forget it. Never. Tenderly Bloom over liverless bacon saw the Titan feature strain, backache he. Bright sprite eye. Next item on the program. Paying in the piper, pills, pounded bread, worth a guinea a box. Stave it off a while. Sings, too, down among the dead men. Appropriate. Kidney pie. Sweets to the not making much hand of it. Best value in characteristic of him. Power. Particular about his drink. Flaw in the glass, fresh Vartry water. Fecking matches from counters to save. Then squander a sovereign in dribs and drabs, and when he's wanted not a farthing, Screwed refusing to pay his fare, curious types. Never would Richie forget that night. As long as he lived, never. In the gods of the old royal with a little peak, and when the first note, speech paused on Richie's lips. Next, please.
Coming out with a whopper now, rhapsodies about damn all, believes his own lies, does really, wonderful liar, but want a good memory. Which air is that? Asked Leopold Bloom. All is lost now. Richie cocked his lips, pout. A low incipient note, sweet banshee, murmured all. A thrush, a throstle, his breath, bird sweet, good teeth he's proud of, fluted with plaintive woe, is lost. Rich sound. Two notes in one there. Blackbird I heard in the Hawthorne Valley. Taking my motives, he twined and turned them. Almost to new call is lost in all. Echo, how sweet the answer. How is that done? All lost now. Mournful he whistled. Fall, surrender, lost. Bloom bent Leopold ear, turning a fringe of doily down under the vase. Order. Yes, I remember. Lovely air. In sleep she went to him. Innocence in the moon. Still hold her back. Brave. Don't know their danger. Call name. Touch water. Jingle jaunty. Too late. She longed to go. That's why. Woman. As easy stop the sea. Yes. All is lost. A beautiful air, said Bloom, lost Leopold. I know it well. Never in all his life had Richie Goulden. He knows it well too, or he feels, still harping on his daughter. Wise child that knows her father. Dedalus said, me? Bloom askance over liverless saw. Face of the all is lost. Rollicking Richie once, jokes old, stale now, wagging his ear, napkin ring in his eye, now begging letters he sends his son with. Cross-eyed Walter, sir, I did, sir. Wouldn't trouble, only I was expecting some money. Apologize. Piano again. Sounds better than last time I heard. tuned probably, stopped again. Next, please.
Dollard and Crowley still urged the lingering singer over with it. With it, Simon. It's Simon. Ladies and gentlemen, I am most deeply obliged by your kind solicitations. It's Simon. I have no money, but if you will lend me your attention, I shall endeavour to sing to you of a heart bowed down. By the sandwich bell in screening shadow, Lydia her bronze and rose, a lady's grace gave and withheld, as in cool Lucius, aid and ill Mina to tankards, two, her pinnacles of gold. The harping chords of prelude closed, a chord, long drawn, expectant, drew a voice away. When first I saw that form endearing, Richie turned. See, Deathless voice, he said. Brain-tipped cheeks touched with flame, they listened, feeling that flow, endearing flow, over skin, limbs, human heart, soul, spine. Bloom sighed to Pat. Bald Pat is a waiter, hard of hearing, to set ajar the door of the bar. So that will do. Pat waited, waiting to hear, for he was hard of hear by the door. Next, please.
Sorrow from me seemed to depart. Through the hush of air, a voice sang to them low, not rain, not leaves and murmur, like no voice of strings of reeds, or what do you call them, dulcimers, touching their still ears with words, still hearts of their each his remembered lines. Good to hear. Sorrow from each seemed to from both depart when first they heard. When first they saw lost Richie, Holdy, mercy of beauty, heard from a person wouldn't expect it in the least. Her first merciful, love soft, oft loved word. Loved it as singing. Love's old sweet song. Bloom unwound slowly the elastic band of his pocket. Love's old sweet Sonnes la gold. Bloom wound the skein round his fork fingers, stretched it, relaxed, rounded his troubled double, fourfold and octave, guided them fast, full of hope and all delighted. And we shall stop there. So next time we will start with tenors get women by the score. And that's going to be 8. Okay. R.
It's 225 in the Gabler.
Okay, 225 Gabler. Okay, thank you. Other additions, please.
273 in
247
Penguin.
Wordsworth.
All right. Did you get that, Duncan?
No, please go ahead and repeat it, Donna.
273 in the Penguin.
Penguin 273. Okay. Good.
353 in my Penguin.
And then the big Penguin 353. Okay. Okay. Is that all the different editions? All right. Good. Quite nice. Some very
I know.
good.
No,
Very
it's,
good.
it's brilliant. It's really good. I love the way he writes, like just what we just had there. Pat, waiter, waited, waiting to hear, for he was hard of hear by the door. I love the way he repeats. Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure that someone who's very familiar with music and scores could tell us a lot about what's going on here. As it is, I'm kind of a primitive, and I can just enjoy the rhythms and the
Yeah,
little
it's
twists and turns
lovely.
and all that.
Well, I must confess, I'm quite confused by this episode. Yes, I get the rhythm and I love to play with the words.
Mhm.
Really, what's going on? I assume we're sitting in a bar somewhere. We have two barmaids and various events occur. But where is it going? And I'm sorry to sound so stupid, but what's the point?
Oh, well, it's approaching 4 o'clock. This is
I know it's Blaze's time.
yeah, it's about time for Blaze to go to his assignation with Molly.
Mhm.
And Bloom is very aware of it. And then it's also just 4 o'clock, and the different people are gathering together. Simon Dedalus and Ben Dollard, and they're there to begin their late afternoon drinking and singing. And I think really the secret, Lois, to all this is to look at little pieces at a time. You've got the whole scene with the two waitresses, and the two waitresses are, in various levels of flirtation with all the different patrons and with themselves, and there's competition between them, and they're dreaming of they had the Lord Mayor going by in the carriage, and just all this little stuff that adds up to a grand symphony.
Yeah, and the waitresses do. They do seem to like Buck Mulligan. Probably a good catch.
You mean Blazes?
Blaze. Oh, sorry, Blaze spoiled it, because he'd be a good catch. Sorry, I wasn't concentrating.
Yeah, well, you did have that scene there where there's the disappointment, after Lenehan is just a goofball, and he's begging the waitress to snap her garter, and she actually, I think, does it not for Lenehan. She's doing it because Blazes Boylan is there. And yet she doesn't know that Blazes Boylan is going off to meet Molly. So she's very confused about why did he rush out the door right after she snapped her garter. She was hoping to get more of a rise out of Blazes, but he just walked out the door instead.
Let's just go back to the previous episode, if that's okay. I know that it's written somewhere that, if Dublin were ever removed from the earth, reading Ulysses, you could recreate it. And I must say, I enjoyed the last episode. I could follow exactly where he was going. I'm sure that the Dublin-based readers would probably agree. And it made it all very real, I must say.
Mm-hmm.
That now contrasts greatly with what Lewis said about this chapter. I'm just as confused as you, Lewis, but I'm just listening to it.
Well, given all the on the same theme, the geographical references, I mean, given all the new additions and mistakes corrected and everything, there's a glaring mistake in this one in terms of the Lord Lieutenant's journey. He passes out Marion Road out towards the corner of Haddington, and they say he goes over the Royal Canal. It's the Grand Canal. There's only two canals in Dublin, one's north side and one's south side. And I was just thinking, I don't believe this, but it's a mistake geographically. So don't try and suddenly jump if you're ever trying to follow the journey. You just keep going straight. You'll be grand. You'll get over the Grand Canal. It was just odd.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
Emily, do you think that's a deliberate choice or did he make a mistake?
It doesn't make sense as deliberate. It's not like it's humorous or it's a little quirk. It just seems to be, weird. But look, it just struck me for the first time this evening, reading through it. I said, what? Are you mad? I wouldn't go. It's like a taxi driver in Dublin taking a tourist, and the tourist kind of said, how many American embassies are there in Dublin? Because the guy's just taking them round and round, creasing the fare. So, I mean, is it like one of a predecessor of the Dublin taxi driver where he takes them north, south, north, south, north, south, and then they finally get to where they're going? Anyway, just a thought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That last section in Wandering Rocks is actually very interesting because it brings all the pieces together in one grand finale. The geographical thing, of course, is for myself, as not being a person who's even been to Dublin, I've just accepted all willy-nilly as being just fine and dandy, and I'm just enjoying the fact that we've had all these separate pieces and they're right at the end being brought together in a crescendo.
I get that. It doesn't really matter where all the groups converge. They do, and there are scenes between them. So it's the rest of it is kind of nearly immaterial, except for the fact that it's done is that, you could recreate Dublin from all the references, but it's not essential. It's a bit like sometimes I would miss a lot of the more obscure references. I wouldn't know enough. It's lovely to hear about them, but I can still read it straight as it is and enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's layers in this.
Yep.
I was more wondering about the water. In Dublin at the time, could you drink the water? Because I know that in sort of the 17th and 18th century in London, you could drink water, but everybody drank booze. But there seems to be an awful lot of drinking of alcohol or drinking of tea because you boil the water. Nobody drinks anything except for tea and booze. And then coffee in the cabman's shelter. So I was just wondering, was there a problem with water? Had people just decided that we'll drink anything but water? And then I was wondering about, they're drinking Powers and cider. So in particular times of the year, you drank cider, only in summer, usually.
Mm-hmm.
So the minute you see somebody drinking cider, it's a summer drink.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I know they mention. I'm going to confuse. They mention Jemison and Finnegan's Wake, so it's all Jemmies and Jemsons, but there's a Power here. And is it Bloom who's drinking the Power?
No, it's Goulding.
No, it's the other
Bloom.
guy.
Yeah, Bloom's
Goulding.
drinking.
Okay.
Bloom's having cider.
Okay.
And what is Power? Is that whiskey?
Irish
Yeah.
whiskey. Powers.
Okay. Jameson, I know. Power, I don't.
Powers
Irish
a very, very old Middleton distillery now is distilling Powers. It's back.
Mm.
Powers Gold Label, Green Label, Red Label. There's all different kinds of Powers.
Mhm.
But it was probably more as common at the time as Jameson's would have been in the day.
Oh, well, okay.
I think you're right, Bill. I think it would have been more popular than Jemison.
Yeah.
Powers and a drop of water.
Yep.
A baby Power.
Baby Power.
Baby
That's
Powers.
That's a small bottle. Yeah.
To talk to Orla's point about the water, in the United States, everybody drank alcohol for a long time because the water was questionable. So that's one thing. So I can certainly see that happening in Ireland. And I believe that the Three Castles podcast, which are you familiar with that? It's a
No.
Dublin-based podcast, and I believe that fellow has a episode on water, and the fellow who really cleaned up the water in the Liffey, etc. So I'll take a look at that. You might take a look also. I know there is a podcast on that very topic, and but I don't remember when it was done. When the engineer engineered a safer water supply for Dublin.
In the penultimate episode, when they're back at Bloom's, and it's a question, a sort of a catechistic questions and answers. Bloom spends a lot of time talking about how water gets to Dublin from the reservoir and through these various pipes and stuff. So, I mean, obviously there were fountains, there was water available to people. Obviously they used it for making tea, they used it for washing up. And they probably drank it occasionally, but I think it's like any metropolis in the day, it was probably safer to drink something that had been processed, like beer or gin or whiskey, something distilled rather than something out of the tap.
And it certainly makes sense in terms of what happened to families around that stage, people who used to live very close to city centre. It was the time of the great exodus towards the suburbs, towards the new townships. And partly that was because of health, because babies and young children were dying like flies. So I'd been cholera or typhus, I don't know. But water would have been an element in that. So it probably was around then that they started to tidy it up. But there'd been this exodus already. Just looking at my great grandfathers, one of the families, and they were well over the time. They lived, within the canals. I had just noticed my great grandma, I thought like they'd 5 children, but it turns out they'd more like 10. But 5 of them died as babies or toddlers. And the family at that stage moved out towards Rathmines, which is outside the scope of Ulysses, but the new townships where they could manage the water supply and it was healthier. So it does make sense that they were still cautious about water. And, as Orla said, a lot of alcohol was had, so that's just by the by,
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, actually, in all when people talk about longevity, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, what they're really talking about is the rate of mortality for children under 5. That if you made it past 5, you actually had a very good chance of living to quite a ripe old age. But the death rate among small children and women in childbirth was huge. Those were the big deals.
Yeah, my father used to comment when any element of divorce was mentioned. Well, how do you possibly cope with all these second and third families? It'd be far too confusing. Everything, especially in the early days, women died. So fathers of young children married again, and sometimes again. So there were a lot of blended families then. It's not a new thing,
Even here in Cleveland, my great aunt lost an infant to typhus. They lived in a Irish neighborhood in Cleveland, which was pretty poor, and water wasn't great. And the infant, she was I think just about a year old when she died, maybe not quite. And it was typhus. That would have been in like 1901, somewhere around then, right about the same time, early 20th century.
So let me
great dinner at that time.
Let me point out one glaring fact, which is the only females mentioned in this chapter that are actually in the place and are the two waitresses. Other than them, it's all men.
Yeah, Molly gets mentioned. She's not present.
Well, and the woman who runs the hotel, Mrs. Massey, I think is mentioned, and she's probably on site, but we don't see or hear her. We only
Oh,
see
okay.
we only see the barmaids.
Where is
What
she
kind of-
mentioned? Bob?
She's when the Boots brings in their tray, and I think Miss Kennedy says, "I'll tell Mrs. Massey on you if your impertinence, if you don't change your ways." So she's Mrs. Massey would be their employer, their whoever's
Okay.
managing the hotel or
Mhm.
managing the restaurant part. I'm not sure, or managing the bar maybe.
Yeah.
But it's not just a bar, it's a restaurant with a dining area
Mhm.
and probably a dance floor and a piano in the other room where the gentlemen retire with their drinks to play the piano and sing songs while other people are dining in the dining area proper.
Okay. Great. Lois, what were you going to say or ask?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the name Miss Deuce. What's the origin of that name? All I can think of is Irma la Douce, the film.
Yeah, it's a sweet name.
Touche.
But is it Irish? Is it French? Is it what? I'm just curious. Are there many people walking around in Ireland in the last 100 years whose last name was Deuce?
Don't think so.
I rather doubt it.
He's talking about Huguenots. He mentions Huguenots
Yes.
in that chapter. So maybe if
Maybe
we
it's
go
French.
read it again next year, we will be looking for, is there a French element to some of the people?
There's Miss Dubedat as well, which is probably Huguenot or French derived. I saw when I was there in Dublin last year, I saw the Huguenot cemetery right there by Stephen's Green, where it's right off. It's not in Stephen's Green, but whatever that street is by the
Marion Road,
it's on Marion Row, yeah.
just beside the Shelburne.
Yeah.
And Lois, they were 17th century French who left France after one of the Henrys decided to ban Protestants. And they left France and came to Ireland, and some of the famous linen that was from Ireland and lace was from them. And sometimes if you look at old Irish furniture, there's certain elements that would be considered sort of Huguenot. I mean, the fancy stuff is Georgian, but there would be certain Protestant ethics in the furniture. It's not Shaker, but it's more elegant than that. But there's it embeds in the culture in certain ways.
Where were there were mills in is it in Balbriggan where the mills were, where the underwear industry was headquartered, for just north of Dublin. And it's where Father Conroy, Gabriel's brother, was posted as a curate. And he was mentioned very briefly in the Wandering Rocks, which is interesting to me because even characters that aren't in this book make a brief appearance, but he is in Dubliners. He does appear in the Story of the Dead. Gabriel talks about his brother and that he's up in, I think it's Balbriggan. Maybe I'm not. My memory's not as good as it used to be. Anyway. And it's also curious that we meet characters that we haven't met yet in Ulysses, like Gertie McDowell shows up. We haven't heard anything about Gertie McDowell yet. We haven't heard anybody. There are a couple of them, a number of them that don't show up until the later episodes of Ulysses. But Joyce puts them in this episode. And it's, that's again why you can't read it once. You have to read the book at least more than once, because you would never know who that, when you read it the second time, and then you'll see Gertie McDowell with her father's lino, Gatesby's linos, then you kind of get it, because of that episode, having read it later.
Mhm.
This comes from Middle English and means sweet or pleasant. It's also from Anglo-French, from the feminine of does, D-U-Z, and also from the Latin, dulcis.
Mhm.
But whether that refers to a surname is anybody's guess. Maybe Joyce is using it as a pun.
Okay. Have we completed today? Any last questions, observations, etc.?
What's a cost bag? Towards the end of the prior chapter.
Richie Golding and his.
Yeah, what's a cost bag of Golding?
Golding, Collis and Ward is the firm that Richie Golding works for.
Yeah.
And my assumption is the cost bag would have receipts or bills due. I mean, he's either doing collections for them or he's, yeah.
Okay, we have in the porch of Four Courts, Richie Golding with the cost bag of Golding, Collis and Ward saw him with surprise. So he's sitting on the porch with his cost bag, holding a bag full of receipts.
Well, I think it's a briefcase, maybe.
Yeah.
That sounds likely. All right, I've got it. Yeah.
See. Yeah, and it's mentioned. It's mentioned in earlier chapters as well. I believe maybe even as far back as Proteus. There's a mention of the cost bag, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, episode 3
Mm-hmm.
of section 1.
Thank you. And also there's a wonderful image a little bit after that, a tongue of liquid sewage. Wonderful image.
In fealty, that completes the whole
Yes,
thing. That's a good.
Hung out in fealty, a tongue of liquid sewage. I love the image.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
My research is showing that in Ulysses episode 11, Sirens, Joyce uses assonant sound, repeat words, and carefully breaks up sentences to give his prose a rhythmic flow, plus Goose and Kennedy's lively conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So probably what I will do, there is a site, I think it's out of Columbia University, some student or professor did it, which has all of Ulysses, but it has hot links all the way through it. To where when you're reading it, if you came across a term, I would imagine that cost bag has a hot link in it, that if you click on it, it'll give you further information. And I know when I started reading Ulysses the first time, I found it enormously helpful. Because, I did have copies of, things like Gifford's Ulysses annotated, which is very nice. And I keep on wishing they would put out a Kindle edition, but they probably won't. But this Columbia University site does a little bit of that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Hey,
Ready?
thank
Bye-bye.
you. Good to see you all. Have a good week. Keep cool.